Angus Adams, Chapter 14, Ambushed. What do you mean it wasn't there? Of course it was there, said Hamish. Angus passed him a cricket from the jar. They were feeding the water dragons after Hamish had been awarded some rare free time and Angus had finished work. He'd told his tale of the box search with Hamish annoyingly interrupting at every opportunity. I'm telling you it wasn't there, he said. Did you look properly? Demanded Hamish, dropping the cricket into the terrarium. Frodo pounced on it. I mean, crikey, you said you were rushed, so maybe you missed it. I didn't miss it. It just wasn't there. Maybe you lost it on the oval. With luck, a cleaner picked it up and just chucked it in the bin thinking it was rubbish. Did you at least look for names on the stuff in the box? Said Hamish. No, I didn't have time to do anything except look for your stupid note. Hey, the note's not stupid. Angus sighed. We still don't know it was him in the first place, he said. Mrs. Nesbit's mini iPad definitely wasn't in there. So what? He could have stashed it somewhere else, Hamish said stubbornly. Angus filled the lizard's water bowl from a jug. There's got to be more we can do, he said. A good detective doesn't get fixated on only one suspect. We need to remember it might be someone else. No, it's him, said Hamish. I'd bet my Wildlife Warriors membership badge on it. The next day back at school, they decided to tail Mr. Jackson over lunch one final time to see if it led anywhere. They watched him add compost to the Year One's vegetable garden, fix a leaky bubbler at the tuck shop, and chat pleasantly with Mrs. Nesbit, who passed by. The height of him, talking to her after what he did, said Hamish. When the bell rang to go back to class, they'd gained not a scrap more evidence. That afternoon, Hamish headed off to his mother's waiting car and an extracurricular activity of some sort. Angus couldn't keep track of them all. Liam was going with a friend for a play date, so he would be riding home alone. He put his bag on the ground so he could unlock his bike. But then a strange thing happened. Without warning, his bag went flying out from under his hand. What the heck? Someone had kicked it viciously away. He was suddenly in a huge shadow. Uh-oh, Rapata Takani. Adams, said Rapata, no longer lisping after a visit to the dentist. Did you think you were going to get away with it? Angus looked around quickly to see who was about. Not a single teacher down in the staff car park. Typical. Where are they when you need them? Rapata, it was an accident, he stammered. I didn't mean... Shut it, said Rapata, as he lifted his right hand and made a fist clearly intended for Angus's face. Angus did the only sensible thing he could. He turned and ran. Having the advantage of being a good runner, he scaled the small retaining wall near the bike racks and sprinted across a small rock garden towards the school dental van. Beyond that lay the office and safety. He glanced back. Rapata was limping after him. Thank goodness for that sprained ankle. He'd have no problem outrunning him to the office. Whoa! Wrong-footed, he lost his balance, tripped over a rock and was sent sprawling. Rapata was over him before he could scramble up. Ha! Ha! Said the giant in a slow sneer and kicked Angus hard in the ribs. Okay, that hurt. Now what, curl up in a ball, or is that for a dog attack? Same thing. He did his best to curl up. From under his arm he could see Rapata take aim for another kick, this time to the head. As the enormous boot came at him, Angus rolled fast to the right and kicked hard with his own foot in a sweeping arc. It caught Rapata on his grounded leg, knocking it out from under him. He came down in a heap. Angus started scrambling to get up and away. Stop right there, shouted a man's voice as he got to his feet. The two of you, don't move. Angus, startled, looked toward the voice. It was Mr. Jackson, of all people. From the direction of the hall, he came running towards them. Great, thought Angus. Now I'm going to be in trouble again. But when Mr. Jackson reached them, he grabbed Rapata by the shirt collar and dragged him up to standing. I saw the whole thing. You're off to the office, he said. Now. Rapata scowled but limped off, shooting Angus a last menacing glare. Are you okay, Angus? Mr. Jackson helped him up. That was a nasty kick you took. Yeah, I guess, he said, getting to his feet. Ouch, maybe a rib was broken. You're bleeding, said Mr. Jackson, pointing to Angus's right knee. It was indeed badly grazed and bleeding. Come with me, I've got some band-aids in the workshop. Angus had no choice but to go with him, limping himself a bit now. In Mr. Jackson's workshop, he sat in a chair and held a cloth to his bleeding knee while the groundsman called the office to report the incident. Rapata's going to see Mr. Dingwall, he said after hanging up. Now let's get you sorted. How are the ribs? Can you push on them? It hurt, but Angus could push on them without screaming. Don't think anything's broken, but you'll have a nasty bruise tomorrow. He rummaged through his desk drawer looking for a band-aid. Angus looked down and realised with astonishment that the box was on the floor right at his feet. Right there. He suddenly felt very uncomfortable. And it wasn't just because of his ribs. Was Mr. Jackson a bad guy? Were bad guys usually this nice? While he considered this, there was a brisk rat-a-tat at the workshop's open door. It was one of the ladies who worked in the office wanting to speak with Mr. Jackson. While the other adults talked in the doorway, Mr. Jackson, with his back to the room, Angus quietly bent down, slid a finger under one flap of the box and lifted it up. Maybe he had missed the note. Another quick look couldn't hurt. Looking for something? He snapped his head up. Oh, goodness, let's just forget that word there. He was dead. The lady had gone. Mr. Jackson was looking at him. His face was unreadable. He began as his face heated up. Then Mr. Jackson did the last thing in the world Angus would have expected him to do. He started laughing. And not an evil mwahaha laugh, but a you crazy kid laugh. He reached into his pocket and pulled something out. Is this what you're looking for? He handed it to Angus. It was the note. Hamish had dropped it in the box after all. They looked at each other. He had no idea what to say, but at least Mr. Jackson was still smiling. I'm not the thief, he said. Angus was rendered mute, his mouth incapable of forming words. I read what's on there. You think all those things in my box have been stolen from the school? It was a statement, not a question. Look at my desk, Angus. He looked. Actually, now he really looked. He noticed a laptop with the back taken off, wires and circuitry exposed, and there was a phone in the same condition. I was an electrical engineer in the army, Angus. In my spare time, I try to fix people's old broken phones and computers and stuff. If I can fix them, I give them to the kids' hospital for the kids to use. People give me these things. I don't steal them. And there on the wall above the desk was a framed certificate of thanks from the children's hospital with a photo of a smiling Mr. Jackson and some kids. Angus hoped for an asteroid to hit Earth immediately and save him from the shame. What an idiot he was. Mr. Jackson wasn't a thief, he was the opposite of a thief. He was a kind man who gave his time to fix broken stuff for free and help 6 children. Some detectives he and Hamish had turned out to be. Sorry, he said quietly, looking everywhere except the man's eyes. It's okay. It's okay. And clearly you're not the thief either, or you'd hardly be hunting for the real one. I just want to clear my name. Understandable. Mr. Jackson applied the band-aid to his knee. On the desk, Angus noticed a second photo. Mr. Jackson with his arm around a little girl, 5 or 6 years old maybe. Who's she? He asked, indicating the picture. My daughter. She died. I'm sorry, he said again, not knowing what else to say. She was in the hospital for a long time. The staff were good to her. Neither of them said anything for a time. Look, continued Mr. Jackson finally, I think it's great that you and your friend are trying to find the thief. But you have to be realistic about your chances. And you definitely don't want to be going into any schoolrooms without permission like you did the other day, or you will end up in even more trouble. Okay, Angus said, standing up. Just a thought, said Mr. Jackson. But if you're serious about finding the culprit, I'd look closer to home. Closer to home? Angus didn't understand. The phone was found in your tidy tray, right? Yes, but Angus couldn't finish as Mr. Jackson's own phone started to chirp. I've got to take this, he said, looking at the screen. You should get going. I hope the ribs aren't too sore. Angus left and went to find his bag, still unsure exactly what Mr. Jackson had meant about looking closer to home.